In this episode of the Business of E-commerce, I talk with Brendan Moskwa about looking beyond your e-commerce platform. This is the Business of E-commerce, episode 23. Welcome to the Business of E-commerce, the podcast that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow their e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Pulaski. I talked today with Brendan Moskwa. Brendan is the founder of Nadimo. Nadimo is a development agency that helps e-commerce retailers specializes in integrations with different platforms. I know they do a lot of Magento work, and they focus a lot on improving customer experiences, workflows, and things like that. And they do that a lot with integrations. So I want to bring Brendan on the show to kind of talk about how to use integrations to kind of enhance customer experience and that sort of thing. So, hey, Brendan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Charles.
Yeah, it's good chatting with you. So I want to kind of bring you on. I know you guys specialize in kind of integrations and how that fits into the platform itself, and kind of what you can do of moving beyond just the platform and enhancing that using integrations. So I want to kind of chat with you a bit about that.
I think that would be a fun show.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned there, too, was in improving the customer experience. And that's really what we like to focus on. I mean, what we try and do is basically we really see ourselves as the accelerator for growth, but we use technology for that. So basically, we accelerate business growth in e-commerce world through technology, but we also like to try and blend it with ensuring customer expectations and customer experience is a positive one. Because, I mean, it's one thing to use technology. That's great. I mean, you need to. I mean, e-commerce is exactly that. It's technology-based. But the part of it that gets lost a lot of the time is the customer experience as a whole. And, I mean, you have to make sure that you're focusing on your customer's experience. And what we've found is that there's a lot of ways that you can use, especially that's what I love about the e-commerce world, is you can use technology directly to assist in that on so many levels, and specifically with integrations. And so, the first question I always get is, well, what platform should I be on? Should I be on Shopify, Magento?
People love asking that. Yeah, you see that every time. People love talking about the initial platform, which is very interesting. So I'm sure you have an opinion there.
Yeah. Well, I have many opinions there, but basically, to me, it comes down to what's the right fit for you and your company.
Yep.
It really comes down to that, and it really is such a unique fit that it's not a blanket answer I can give anyone. So, I've seen that question come up in the Quora forums,
yep.
The Quora questions, whatever you want to call that, and everything so often that I often wonder, how could I answer this? And I don't know, I end up not answering those questions for people unless it's like a specific call one-on-one, because, you could use, a person starting out could use a Shopify store, or they could use a Magento store, and it really all depends on what your overall goals are. Yep. As a business, is really the way I see it, and it also depends on how big you are or plan to become, and the speed at which you're going to be accelerating your growth, and all of these. There's so many variables to that there isn't one specific answer. Yeah,
and there's also the level of customization, right, and kind of how big your team is.
That's the biggest thing.
Yep.
And that's exactly why, you did mention that we do a lot with Magento,
yep.
And the reason for that is actually the fact that we can do a lot of customization work, yep. There. And so when you do get into a lot of the customization and the integrations perspective of things that you mentioned there too, there's so much you can do to outside of your old standard retail outlet, right? People come into your store, and now they're starting to track where people walk and look at and all these types of things. Well, the nice thing about e-commerce is you can do that right away.
Yep.
You can figure out where people are going in your store and where the transactions are coming from, not just based on the products that are selling, but based on the routes that they're taking and all of this data that's available to you. when you get on, when you look at that data. And it's the nice thing now is it's to a point where there's companies out there they make it very easy to read. So you're not having to spend hours upon hours or hiring somebody just to break down the data and the raw log files, for example. Now there's specific widgets you can simply add to your site that integrate, and then you're able to track and follow exactly what people are doing. In fact,
now you're talking from like a Google Analytics type of stuff, or is it some other level of like reporting?
Well, there's a lot of options that are similar to analytics. Analytics, I think Google Analytics is an important piece to have on every site because it does give you a snapshot of what's going on, and you can obviously increase your conversions if you know roughly what's happening. But there's also other options out there where you can literally watch the customer's journey, and you can see, and it records if they're having they're what people can call in the industry call rage clicking or anger clicking or whatever, and they're just clicking on something because they think you're supposed to click there to watch a video or something, and you don't even realize that because
I've had a site before where there was something that must have looked like a button, and after using some software like that, we found out that I didn't think it was a button. When we built it, we didn't think it was a button, but apparently everyone thought it was a button, and people were clicking on this section of the site expecting it to do something. And after using that, we realized, we could just make that, clickable. We need to make it go somewhere. And we actually tried to figure out what are people like trying to do when they click on this. It was like, it must have been an image, but something made it look like it was clickable. So we had to actually make that clickable and hyperlink it out somewhere. We learned it by using something like that. So exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's all kinds of solutions out there that allow you to recognize that sort of thing. And one of the things, I mean, you're in your day-to-day grind, right? And you don't realize, I think I heard it yesterday on one of my podcasts that I did with the fella, and he had said something along the lines of, you can't read the label when you're in the bottle.
Yep.
And it's kind of that same premise, right, where you don't see these things because you designed them or you were involved in that development portion of things, and so you don't recognize these things that the technology can find real quick. And especially nowadays with machine learning and artificial intelligence becoming such a, they're almost buzzwords, unfortunately, but when they're done right and they're actually used the right way, you can collect a lot of data and then actually get it to spit out valid information for you. So that it can help direct you and help save the overall time and effort that's needed in sifting through all of this information. Because, it may not seem like a lot of info. You might just have a smaller site, and you may not need that level of detail. But if you're running a site that's doing, thousands of transactions, there's sites that do thousands of transactions in a minute, but I'm not going to go there. But when you get data, the amount of data you're getting just can exponentially increase very quickly. And so it's nice to have solutions like this. And the thing I love about them is they can be implemented very cost effectively and scaled, right? Like we were just talking about.
Because these are hosted. Are these hosted on your site, or what are some examples of software like this that nowadays?
Well, there's a company called Full Story.
Yep.
That's one that does actual video recordings of the customer on your site. Obviously, just so people don't freak out, it's not like they're recording through the customer's camera and watching the customer. They're following the click, right? So they're following the mouse and where the mouse is clicking, and that's when they record what are called the rage clicks.
Yep.
And then there's all kinds of companies out there that do what it's called personalization, which is they're collecting the data to help you create a personal journey for customers.
Interesting.
Now, you start to get pretty in-depth when they start to try and do some of those types of things, and it can start to get costly. But the nice thing, like I said, is a lot of these solutions are SaaS-based, so there's different levels of
pricing that kind of scales up. Yeah, pricing that kind of scales up with growth. It sounds like
exactly, and I'm not always a fan of that type of solution because it can, it allows you to get, my kind of thinking with SaaS solutions, really, to be honest with you, is twofold. Is one, it's a nice way for the smaller stores to get into the market and be able to play with the big boys. And then, to be honest with you, depending on your budget, I mean, in some cases, some of those SaaS solutions can be custom built for you for a fairly low cost as well.
Yep.
It all really depends on what it is you're doing, right?
And that's really the case. It depends. I kind of found that as well. So then things like Full Story, that's something you basically drop in like a little widget on your site, and that's how they're tracking it. But something like the customization, what's an example of that? Are we talking somebody comes from, a certain region and they localize the language, or is it something a different level than that?
Well, I guess when I'm talking about personalization, I'm talking more about there can be a lot of different perspectives to that. So, for example, let me just give you an example more than anything. Paint a picture. So, someone comes to your site and and you've got, for example, maybe you have Facebook snippets or Twitter code pieces on your site so that it can recognize who this person is already, and or maybe they've got an account with you because they're a returning customer. Either way, there's some way of identifying who this person is, and then what you can do from there is you can essentially create an entire journey for them. So let's just use a modern day example that I run into all the time. Let's say that you sell clothes, or something of that sort of nature, and you go onto the site and it recognizes your geo mapping and says, okay, this person is in this area. Oh, guess what? There's storms predicted to be coming, a big snowstorm coming next week. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your system automatically puts winter attire, or rain gear, or you have the reverse. It's going to have a hot spell, so it puts sandals or shorts or whatever it is that you specialize in there.
Yep.
That's a fairly. It's becoming more commonplace, that example, believe it or not, and that is something that can be done with simple API-level solutions.
Yeah, is that something that's running on the site, or is that something that's just, is that like a JavaScript widget that goes on the site and then pulls from different pages, or is that something that actually runs inside like a Magento core, for example?
It would probably be a little bit of both.
Okay.
You're probably going to tie in with an API into certain solution providers who are providing you with access to, for example, access to the weather information.
Yep.
And then we would have something custom coded, for example, where it's going to then say, okay, this weather means we're going to put this type of product in front of that person. And that's just that's really a relatively easy example because I didn't want to get it overly complex, but
yeah, it sounds like something you could go very extreme with, right?
Well, you can. You can get right down to a specific user, and that person likes red, and they like a specific type of sunglasses because it actually does. With machine learning, you can actually go out there if you know who this person is and you know their Instagram account, and all of a sudden you're looking at their Instagram, you see them with a picture of a certain type of sunglasses all the time, and the system recognizes those sunglasses and says, okay, well, here's an example. Here's some sunglasses you should be looking at getting for this upcoming heat wave. You can get right in, oh, guess what? They're black because we know you like the color black for your sunglasses. Or they're pink because you just love the pink sunglasses for some reason. But, the level of machine learning and artificial intelligence that's available can do that type of thing now.
Yeah, that sounds. It sounds like some of these tools now that they're actually, like in the SaaS model, even small retailers can actually kind of leverage them without having to spend a fortune to implement them kind of get them going. What are some actual?
You can. I mean,
who are some folks actually doing this now? What are some examples of companies doing this personalization, or at least people that you think do it well?
Well, I know Cahart does that.
Yep.
They do it with the weather for sure, and I believe they're starting to introduce colors and that sort of thing, color selections. I'm trying to think. There's a fairly large fashion company, luxury fashion company in Europe that's doing it. Unfortunately, the name of the company is not, I think it's Ukes.
Interesting.
I can't remember their name now, to be honest with you.
Do you know any tools you'd recommend that kind of do this well, or?
Well, yeah, actually I would. For what we're talking about specifically there, when we do these integrations for some of our clients, which quite honestly, we wouldn't probably do it quite to the level that we talked about. I mean, we would and we have, but it all depends on the size of your company.
Yep.
That said, there's one of the solutions that's little known, believe it or not, it's IBM. They've got a thing called IBM Blue Mix, which is essentially all of their APIs, which tie into the different machine learning tools. There's also a newer company that's using some of the personalized like sentiments. Basically their company is actually called Sentiment.io, and it's sentiment with a C. They're a little bit outside of the norm in regards to SaaS solutions for your website. They do more SaaS solutions for monitoring and monitoring your social listening and that sort of thing. But I do some work with them in regards to, building some custom solutions and that sort of thing. So that's where you get into the more custom features. But they really work with some of the personalization. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Personality insights and actual sentiments. Like they do a lot with neuro. They've done some neuro mapping where they actually mapped the brain, and they've put that into their machine learning tools and use a lot of the personality profiling tool through IBM actually, and they're able to identify like 51 different feelings. So instead of your typical listening tools where you go, yes, it's positive, negative, or neutral, they can say it's positive and this person is feeling 50% love and 41% trust and that type of thing.
How do they know that? How do they know I'm feeling love and trust through my browser? Like, how does that actually come across?
Well, you're probably talking to the wrong person in that regard. Now, that said, I can still answer it somewhat on a higher level.
You said they're not using my camera. They're not looking at me, so they know somehow.
No. So what they're doing is, from my understanding, and you'd probably want to talk to Sentiment themselves, but they've done what I said, the neural mapping, so they can, based on different words, basically, it's doing a lot of word tagging. So, for example, let's say, what it does is it looks out there, and if you go and you type in a keyword into this tool, it'll look over 100 different social platforms and those types of things, and it says, okay, the word love is coming up, or not love, but certain words that have been neural mapped to the brain as lighting up certain sections in the brain that are feelings. So it's done a lot of that, as well as tying into a lot of the personality profiling that IBM has been specializing and working in with regards to just using a lot of big data that's available. They also they did some work with Sprint so that they could work with, I think it was 100,000 different users there, to help them pull all this big data together to identify these types of things.
Yeah,
So it's really based on the types of words.
Yeah, like words like repair or fix. You could see, if I'm looking to repair something, that's almost like a negative. You're coming from kind of a unhappy place.
Yes.
Versus probably some other words like that you're searching for. Yeah, that would be a little more, even just the word buy. You're probably a little more excited to buy something than if you're searching, buy an iPhone versus repair an iPhone. I'm probably a lot more excited when I'm typing buy iPhone than repair iPhone. It's probably not in a great mood at that point. So you'd see some things like that.
One of the good examples a perfect example is if, for example, you're not an agency, but let's say you're a big e-commerce company, and so you just have this social listening tool, Sentiment, on running, and you type in, your company's brand name, right? It's going to give you an overall feel of what people are saying and thinking out there. And really, when you look at the tool, it's quite amazing because I saw a demo on it, and I was just quite shocked because it's like all of this red, right? So you go to the red and you hover over it, and it's telling you, okay, these people, different words that are coming out and different feelings and stuff that are the overall sentiment that's being generated.
Okay.
And then
so listening on like social networks.
Yeah, and within 5 minutes, you're able to tell that, okay, these people are all very, very mad about something that's happened. And so, that's going to go as far as social listening. And now where I tie that back into e-commerce is if you're an e-commerce company and you're monitoring your competition, for example, you're able to take advantage of that very quickly. And if it's your company, all of a sudden you might find out that one of your specific sale you were having and that page is broken. Or, that's not necessarily the best example, but people might get mad and there's this negative feeling out there, and it tells you beyond the negative, you know what I'm saying? And so
you can kind of picture
really dial into that.
Even certain products at certain times kind of have this either in the positive or negative, but a certain excitement about them. Like in the summer, obviously there's going to be like outdoors type stuff, that sort of thing. You picture even firearms. Sometimes there's going to be certain people more excited versus less excited about them. And depending on what products you're selling, you might be able to kind of use that to your advantage in seeing what groups are talking about what at what time, or even just what the hot products are.
Exactly.
Yeah, the seasons are changing. What are people actually excited about this summer versus, and maybe take those products and realize, everyone wants to go, kayaking. It's the summer, and you're an outdoors retailer. Put that stuff front and center versus maybe the other products kind of hide those a little more behind and make them a little less obvious to the user.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly right. And when you're able to tie into these types of things, some of those are plug-and-play options. The one when I say plug-and-play, I'm talking about you just easily put a little code snippet on your site and dial into a SaaS solution that's already out there. Then there's, what we talked about with Sentiment.io. Some of what we talked about is SaaS, the SaaS capabilities that are there. When you want to really pull that into your site, like you just mentioned there with it's going to, serve up specific products based on an overall sentiment that might be out there. Like you said, there's a big, positive vibe right now behind canoeing or something like that, or kayaking. Okay, well, let's get those items pushed on our site right now, and hey, social team, get out there and do this. That's a little bit more customization and that type of thing, but that's the fun thing. That's what I love about my job and what we do is we really work with a broad range of people who either want to get to that someday, may not be anywhere near it right now, but, want to build for that, or even just want to get, take advantage of some of the smaller pieces to improve their conversions, right to the bigger companies that are ready and able to do the full-blown customization and those types of pieces.
Yeah, you can definitely see on the big company level, you can see how this would, immediate bump. I'm trying to think on a small, kind of what would be an example of a very small implementation that if you're, the average retailer, running a relatively small business, what are some things they could take advantage of, like right now, sort of thing?
Well, I'll tell you, actually, there's one implementation I didn't talk about that I think is almost absolutely critical. There's a company called Addressy, and I think They are one of the most... Okay, they're in a space that's most overlooked, and it's the checkout process. I think the checkout process is absolutely critical to most e-commerce stores, no matter how big or small. That process has to be as fast and fluid and friction-free as possible.
Okay. I see. I'm looking this up as you're saying this, by the way, so I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, and so what they do is they will pre-populate your fields. They do address verification, so on the e-commerce store owner side of things, they're making sure that the addresses are valid and correct.
Yep.
So you don't put in an incorrect address, send out the product, it comes back. Now your customer's mad because they didn't get it, and you're upset because you've just spent all this money on shipping. But the nicest thing I can think of about what they do is they expedite that whole process and make it friction-free, so you're not sitting there having to fill in 50 fields. You start to fill in one field and all the rest get populated for your address.
It's funny, I've been on the side, so if you go to, I'll link to this in the show notes, and I've seen this as a user and never knew what they were using. But I've also, so I do e-commerce automation, I see orders come in, and sometimes the addresses that come in are completely, sometimes the street name is in the wrong field, stuff that's easily recognizable, but makes it that the package is unshippable. And then what happens is the retailer gets that. It might even get sent to a distributor, for example, and the distributor says, they might even try to send it, and something it might not be caught until it gets to UPS, and then they come back and say, this isn't even an address, guys. And then you have to go all the way back. Each person, the retailer has to go back to the user, try to call them on the phone and say, hey, what really is the address? So they need to try to figure it out. And if they can't, then what do they do with that order? And then you have, an upset buyer, right? Because they put their address in, and now 2 days later you found out, this isn't a real address. We need to go back and talk. So they're expecting their package, and they haven't even heard from you for 2 days, and you find out there was a misspelling or whatever it was.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually circle back to that and just go into my world of futuristic thinking and go, well, okay, so now you don't have that address verification on there. Now it's taken a day or so even just to find out that the address is wrong. You're now calling your customer who didn't want you to call them. They just wanted to have a nice, quick, smooth process of checking out. And now you're telling them, I need your address again. So then they tell you, forget it. Just cancel the order. I don't want it anymore. Yep. That's worst case. But anyway, worst case would have been you sent it to the wrong address, got it back, and then called them. And then had to send it a second time, And now you find out on your sentiment, social sentiment there that there's a lot of anger and hatred and frustration about your brand. Yep. And you find out that's because there were 100 orders that day or 100 orders that month, whatever, and that's all generated. And now you're finding this out because you don't have something as simple as an address verification solution. So I think that is one of the easiest, and to be honest, the price points for that solution specifically are absolutely amazing. Yep. They even have a free option for the most stores out there. Yeah, and so I always basically it's kind of like a prerequisite of any company that we work with when we build their store from scratch. I always put that integration into it because I think it's. And we have used other solutions other than Addressy, so I'm not saying that they're the only ones. They're just the name that comes to mind, and I've talked to them, and I do like that group. I get nothing for saying that, just so everybody is aware.
There's no affiliate link?
There's none, no.
Yeah, it's surprising how many people don't use stuff like this, to be honest, because I've been on the other side where, being on the automation side, we get to see a lot of orders come through with bad addresses, and just how often that happens. And you would think if there's stuff like this that's that easy to implement, more people would be using it, but not as many that should, honestly. It definitely would make things easier for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is it's all about, when people think about e-commerce and their sites and stuff, the first thing they think about is getting people to click on the product page and getting them to that buying stage. Yep. And I understand that. I totally get that. But the last thing you think about is almost the first thing you should be thinking about. I've said this before on my show. It's like you stand in a line it's like you go to a Walmart or something, you go and you grab a bunch of products, and now or a couple of things, even just two items, and now you're stuck in a long lineup.
Yeah.
Well, now, and there's people with all, even those express lanes don't speed things up necessarily. And so it's just the same. Now you hit a bottleneck at the most critical point there is.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I think that is one of the best solutions out there, in my opinion.
Do you have any good platform, other good recommendations like this? Because this is definitely a good one. Anything else people could implement that you'd recommend?
That's a really good one. I do think Full Story that I mentioned before is a good one too.
Yep.
I believe their price point is good. There's also one, it's called Image IX, I think it is. I'm going to have to double.
Okay.
Yeah. Just give me half a second and I'll check that one.
And what do they do?
What they do is they help you manage your image sizes.
Oh, okay.
Because one of the biggest it's image. It might not be we'll make sure I get you the right one. But it is. It's Image IX. What they do is they do page loads, basically. So if you have one large image for your product page, and that same image serves up on every page, or you're on a mobile device and now that same big image is loading up as would on a desktop, or those types of things. Yep. It can bog down your site. It can slow your site speeds down, which something else that I really suggest people make sure that they focus on is having their sites load fast. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that the average e-commerce site page loads twice as fast as most people are willing to wait, or twice as slow as most people are willing to wait.
Yep.
Yeah. So if it's like a 3 seconds they're willing to wait for the page to load, they're taking 7 or 8 on an average e-commerce page. And that's a large part to do with images a lot of the time. Yep. Which is why I do talk about Image IX. That's another solution to look at.
Yeah, that's a good one. And also that image load is kind of, I know you get dinged by Google if you don't do a good job there. And plus just the user experience, in total suffers.
Exactly. And that's really what it all comes down to, like I said at the beginning, is that user experience.
Yep.
So if you have a site that's running slow in any way, not only do you get dinged by Google and all your SEO efforts kind of go out the window the second you either load a big image file that slows down your site and makes it chunky and slow.
Yep.
But you also, and aside from images, there's all kinds of, if you have too many JavaScripts running or anything, there's a lot of different pieces at play. When you use templates, for example, I've seen templates where there's 50 plus CSS files, and something like that you may not notice as a customer, but Google does. So,
and the other thing is, if you're the owner of the site, most likely you've gone to your site before, and those all are cached in your browser. But if it's the first time you're hitting that site, it's going to have to go hit all 50 of them, load all 50 individually. So that very first experience with your site is going to be a really poor one. And then your browser will cache it. But, a lot of people make that decision. They hit the product page, and they go into Google. They're searching for something very specific. So they're not coming through your home page and waiting for it to all load and cache. They go into a product page looking real quick. And if they don't like it or if it doesn't load, they're going to hit the back browser, and they're gone.
Yes. Yep. Well, that's exactly right. And that's the problem. So you have to make sure your page speeds are very, very good. And that's one of the things that, again, when you're inside the bottle looking out, you can't see the label. I mean, you're dealing with cached pages and cached site 90% of the time when it's something you work with every day. So you don't sit there and you don't notice the site speeds. But like you said, the first-time visitor or a visitor who comes back after being there a week later, or however your caching is set up, it slows it down, and it impacts that customer experience.
And this whole thing about images too is another good point, because I'm spoiled with, we have a high-speed connection here, and I'm in Boston. We have LTE everywhere, so my mobile's fast. But I was just traveling this week, and there were points when I was in the airport on a 3G connection, and you forget how slow that really is. So if you're trying to load even a 1 meg image on that, it's pretty much you have to just back out of the browser. There's nothing else you can do on 3G. So you kind of forget if you're not in a place with LTE everywhere and super fast wireless speeds, then things like images matter 10x more. And a lot of your customers aren't sitting in a place with these super high speed connections. So you might be getting people from a rural area. So it's not something that you immediately think about if you're on a fast connection or have been to the page before. And it's easy to forget.
Yeah. Well, and I'll take that one step further for you, and then I think that kind of comes all full circle. Actually, is mobile. I mean, you don't have one screen anymore.
Yep.
And I mean, everybody talked about mobile, and they still do, but when you're on a mobile experience, for example, you said LTE, and then all of a sudden you're on 3G, right? So if you're traveling and you're looking and surfing a store and everything's working just fine, you get to your checkout process, and let's say you have that type of technology for verification and then pre-populating the fields and that sort of thing, and everything's great, and you're just about to check out, and then you hit a 3G connection and everything slows down, and okay, you stop, and now you're in an abandoned cart, but you did want that purchase. That's one other solution I would mention. It's some sort of a abandoned cart solution, and I know that Recapture, I think it's recapture.io, they've got a fairly good solution for that as well.
I talked to Dave last week actually about that. So, yeah.
And I know you know Dave well. So that's another solution that I think is a very good one as well. And I wanted to mention. I had just forgotten about that because, again, there's so many different good ones out there, but those are the ones that I would focus on.
And just for people who don't know, real quick, or maybe didn't listen to last episode, don't know what we're talking about, what exactly is Recapture? Just on a basic level.
Oh, you're asking me. Sorry, I wasn't sure there. Recapture, what it does is very good point. I
hope they listened to last episode, but let's say they didn't. This is their first episode.
Fair enough, man. No, so what Recapture does is it's essentially going to reach back out to those abandoned carts. It's recapturing those abandoned carts and that sort of thing. So if you've got, you've got somebody who's in your abandoned cart, it starts sending them hey, we noticed your cart's been left, and it sets it all up based on however you set your settings and that sort of thing. But it's a way to re-engage with your existing customer that decided to walk away from your store because the lineup was too long for, just to kind of take it to retail. But that sort of thing, somebody's left your cart, they've left their cart with stuff in it. How do you re-engage them and get some of that going? Recapture some of those potential lost revenues.
Yeah, I was talking.
And I forget the number, but I think it was like 35%.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering.
35% or something increase in sales revenues just because they went back to those people who walked away from the sale for one reason or another. And it could be something as simple as what we just said. You went from a LTE to a 3G connection, everything got slow. It could be anything.
And the thing about that 30% is that's money that just appears. You've already done kind of the marketing, the advertising, the SEO, whatever you're doing to get people to the site. So you've already spent the money and invested it that way. And then all of a sudden you get that much more profitable just by like a simple tool like this that can reach back out to them. And that's kind of mind-blowing on how well it works and how much more efficient it can make your original investment just by installing something like this.
Exactly. No, absolutely. So, I mean, that's where we spend our time. I mean, it's really obviously there's certain solutions we talked about today that I really emphasize for most people and in that case. But, I mean, there's also solutions customizable like we talked about as well. And that's where my company works in that space of let's get, either build you a site from scratch and we'll build these pieces into it as we go or whatever this process might be based on your budget, because sometimes I might just tell you, start a Shopify store, call me back in a few months once you've implemented some basic pieces there to get your sales up.
Yep.
And then we'll work on the next phase. I mean, it all depends on what your site stage is and growth and what your plans are. But really, I mean, it's all about business and growing your business the right way, and not overspending when you don't have to.
Yep.
Because a lot of companies will go out and drop a bunch of money on a solution that they may not have needed to do quite yet, or custom build something that they could have used the SaaS solution for that would have saved them a lot of time. They could have built their revenue base up first. So
I see stuff like that a lot, and it's if it's your first time approaching a project like this, what a lot of folks kind of picture it as is you're going, you're going to custom build something, you're going to a contractor, and they're going to build you a new kitchen. And the contractor builds it, they're there for 4 weeks, they leave, and then you go back to your kitchen and you enjoy that for the next, however many years. But the way it kind of works with software or SaaS or that sort of thing is the contractors are never going to leave. Like, they're not going to go back home, they're going to stay there. So it's more of an evolution where you're going to have someone come in to help you, and then maybe a few months later, they're going to come back and add some more on. And then maybe 6 months later, you're going to do some more enhancements. And it's going to be this process of evolution and not just this one time. We're going to do it, roll it out, it's going to be perfect, and we're done. It's going to be a process that happens over time, and it's going to be continuously evolving for the life of the business. And that's just...
Exactly. Yeah. That's so well said, Charles. And the thing about that, too, is, and that just kind of plays right into exactly what way I do business. I plan on my customers being customers for life, and so that's just my plan. And so in order to do that, what do I have to do? I have to deliver exponentially better service. Like, I have to know what I'm doing, and I have to do it well, and I have to basically have to make you happy every interaction that we do, and we have to do it in the right way, because I want your company to be around for a while, and I take that same approach to the companies that I work with, so that we're thinking about their customer.
Yeah. Right.
So it's kind of an interesting take on it. I mean, I'm looking at your customer as we're doing our work, right? So I'm looking beyond you as my client to what is your client. It's going to make your client happy, kind of thing. But anyway,
that's the thing, right? You want to keep them happy.
Philosophical there.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be the kitchen contractor, but if you don't go home and you're going to stay there and help them, then you want to really be there and make it a process where the people that are working with you are going to stick around, and it's going to be this collaborative effort for a long time. So I definitely like that approach to business. So that might be a good place to end it. If people want to reach out to you, where can they contact you?
Well, there's two ways that are the easiest. One is just going to my website, nadimo.com. It's nadimo.com. And there's a little link right there to chat with me. If I'm available, the chat will be available and turned on. If not, you can just click that and send me a message and it'll go to my email, and I'll get back to you right away. Other option is you can reach out to me on Twitter, and that's bmoskwa. That's B, M as in Mary, O as in Oscar, Sam, KWA. So BMOSKWA on awesome. Twitter. And those are the two best ways to reach me.
Okay.
And my phone number is right on the website as well and everything.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, by all means,
people can really call you real life. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, yes, absolutely. Okay. If I find that's one of the problems in e-commerce too, is they don't put a customer service phone number on there.
Yeah. I know it's shocking when people don't do that.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. I'll link to both those. I'll link to everything we said actually in the show notes. So if people want to find that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll definitely have those. So thank you for coming on the show today. Definitely appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.